In a minimum maximum raise, what's the right minimum to raise? We've addressed the topic of what's the right maximum, and that number is always what it's the amount that you actually can deploy and that you can deploy properly and profitably. But what the amount of minimum that you should raise is, that's a little bit of a different question, and it requires a little bit more thought. So let's put it like this. First, understand that in a minimum maximum raise, the minimum amount of capital is going to be held by an escrow or an attorney or somebody until you reach that minimum, and then the funds are released, which is called breaking escrow. So once you've hit your minimum, you're going to release the money and break escrow. Now, if you're doing a syndication project, there's no minimum because the minimum that you need and the maximum that you need are theoretically about the same. You can't close on the deal if you don't have all the money lined up that you need. Now, you may be able to patch it together with some short-term debt, but all that has to be disclosed to your investors in your documents. But we're talking about a fund where you set a minimum amount and a maximum amount. What do you set a minimum for? Why is it even necessary? First of all, nobody wants to be the first investor. Unless they're related to you, it's very difficult to get somebody to go first. So we've set up these structures so that people feel comfortable coming into your deal first. They don't want to give you the money, though. They want to put the money in a place where it accumulates with a pool of other money until you've hit a minimum amount. Why? Because there's safety in numbers. The more money you raise, the safer it actually becomes for the investors. More money is safer than less money because you can do more with it, you can withstand more difficulties, etc. So when you're thinking about how much you want to set your minimum for, you want to be thinking, what do we need to raise in order to accomplish something that the investors would be satisfied with? Here's what their concern is. Somebody gives you 100 grand. They give you the first money, you take the 100 grand, you put it in the bank. First thing you do, you run out and you buy office furniture, you buy a new truck, you buy signage for your buildings and some other things. And of course, you got a small payroll, so you kind of start paying some bills. And then you can't raise any more money. Let's just say that you're unsuccessful. And then the person says, well, let me have my money back. Well, now that money's all gone. So you want to make sure that you're raising enough money and you're doing enough so that you have enough to actually go make an investment in some real estate or whatever it is that you're working on. Because you never want to find yourself in a situation where your money got bled out in a way that was not productive, because that's exactly what investors are concerned that you're going to do. So you want to raise enough money that, number one, you can go do something that's effective. But number two, you don't want to raise so much money that the money that you have raised is going to sit stuck at the attorney or the escrow, and you have no access to it. So let's say that you need $300,000-$400,000, and you say, well, I'm going to do $1 million. Well, you get to 900,000 and you can't raise anymore because you run out of investors or whatever it is. You really would find yourself in a very difficult situation that you don't want to be in. So here's what you do. Set your minimum at a good number, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. It's a number that you can reasonably achieve, that you can reasonably go do something with that capital. That may not be the biggest project in the world, but maybe you can go buy one small project, or you can get something started. And if that's acceptable, if that's something that you can do, then you're going to be successful. Now, your minimum may need to be $1 or $2 million, depending on what ballpark you're playing in. So it could be smaller, it could be larger, but depending on where you're playing, you need to pick the right number, because that number is going to be very important in terms of establishing confidence by your investors, and also making sure that you don't get tied up in the escrow account for any longer than you need to. So take those into account. This is a great business. Go out and stake your claim.